All right, we are live.
We are
Hello,
live.
welcome to the Insane Asylum. We are here live with Kris Sumner from Soul Sisters Paranormal.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys for having me tonight.
Well, thank you for being with us tonight.
Sherry.
Absolutely.
And our understanding is that you and four other women
Mhm.
are the paranormal group. So you're a complete, total women's paranormal group. You're out and investigating and going to different sites.
Correct. Yes, we are an all-female team made up of myself, my twin sister, our younger sister, and two family friends. So we formed the
Awesome.
group. Yeah, we formed the group in 2014. We formally formed the group in 2014, and we've gone all over the country investigating reports of the paranormal and visiting some very cool historic locations along the way.
Cool. So what got you started into the paranormal? Was there any kind of like an event or something that occurred, happened, or anything like that to you guys, you or any of the members of your group that got you more interested into it and got you going into it more?
Well, we've always had a fascination with the paranormal. You know, we'd watch the paranormal TV shows and such. And we always said that if we had a chance to go and do an investigation, that we would.
Okay.
The first investigation that we did actually was the culmination of a girls' weekend. And our mom is from Glendale, West Virginia originally. So we had a family friend that sits on the board of Moundsville of the state penitentiary. And so our very first investigation was at the West Virginia State Penitentiary. He said, "Why don't y'all come up, spend the night in the penitentiary and see what you find?" So we went up that weekend and did a very rudimentary investigation. We had some night vision video cameras, a couple digital cameras, and some voice recorders. And just really was just really immersed ourselves in the history of it, as well as, you know, obviously the paranormal aspect of it. And we came away with that experience with such compelling evidence that we just decided, you know, we want to formalize this and see where we can go with it. So we came up with the name Soul Sisters Paranormal. We, you know, got the logo, got our trademark, got our theme music, and really just started getting our style together and down pat, and have been just having a ball ever since.
Now that sounds like a lot of fun, and then the best part about that is that you had an inside person
Mhm.
that was there to to get your
We
foot in the door
we
for you.
did, and actually to take it a little bit further, it's actually kind of neat because our grandpa was actually a prison guard at Moundsville when it was in operation, and then he moved on to become the chief of police of Glendale. So we had that familial
Wow.
connection of the area,
Wow.
and actually to be, you know, walking into the cell blocks where we know our grandpa was watching over those prisoners at one time. To us, it was extremely fascinating, and it was really a very cool experience for us to be in that prison.
That is really cool. Now, so you've been doing this since 2014,
Yes, sir.
formally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So have you had any kind of physical altercations that has happened to you?
Not so much from the paranormal. You know, I always say I'm more scared of the living than I am of the dead. So there's been
That's a good
instances.
philosophy.
There's been some instances where, you know, we've had some not so savory people around. We were actually at an investigation at the old Gilchrist County Jail in Trenton, Florida. And we've been there twice. And the first time I was actually there collaborating with Miranda Young from Ghost Biker Explorations. And when we walked up, you know, the owner told us, if you guys carry, make sure you have your pistols with you at all times. And so we did. That was an investigation where we were carrying the entire time. So for us, the physical altercations doesn't come from the paranormal. We're more scared of what's out there in the living.
Okay, our friend here from Off the Rails, Tom Klein. He's from the group Off the Rails. They're a podcast here in Wisconsin, and
He wants to know,
good friends of
are
us.
women
He
more
wants
susceptible to activity happening?
Well,
Like,
Tom,
do you
thank
see
you.
it more often?
Tom, thank you for that question. I really appreciate you joining us tonight. For us, I think because we are an all-female group, I think we are a little bit more empathic, if you will. I'm not going to say that we have the empathic ability, or any of us are mediums because we don't profess to have that. But I do believe we go in with a little bit more empathy. We don't go in with a lot of bravado. We don't go in to provoke. We don't go in to find anything demonic or negative. And because of that, because we go in with what I feel is a legitimate intention of telling the story of the location and any paranormal activity or any paranormal entities that are there, I believe that lends itself to us being successful in finding paranormal activity. So to answer your question, yes.
Cool. Yeah, I myself personally, I think women would be a little more in tune to it because of the fact that
their sensitivity.
They're
sensitive.
They should be more sensitive, not
Most
just because they're women, but because you are the ones that carry and birth the children.
Well, no, and you're absolutely right. And we've been very successful in communicating with children spirits. We were at the Exchange Hotel in Gordonsville, Virginia, and had a very cool interaction with what we feel is a child entity. And the places that we've gone to, Hales Bar Dam in Tennessee, again, we were able to interact with a child there. So for me, I do feel, because we go in, again, with that intention of actually telling the story. And if you watch any of our episodes, that's kind of the theme throughout. We always say, we're here to tell your story. Will you allow us to tell your story? We want to know, what happened to you. I think because we go in with that personal aspect of it, if you will, we do get a better response.
Right. That is pretty cool. Now I'm just kind of curious, what kind of equipment do you use?
Well, first and foremost, we have our voice recorders, so just the Sony voice recorders, and we've got 10 of those suckers. So that to me is our best form. That's our best form of equipment, just because I feel EVPs are the most pure, if you will, form of paranormal activity. So we have those. We have some night vision video cameras. We have several REM pods. We have several K2 meters. We actually all wear body cameras as well to get footage, and then also to give me a timestamp of where everybody is during the night. So when I'm going back through evidence review, if I hear something or see something, I can very quickly cross-reference where everybody was to ascertain if that was one of us or if there's something that we can't explain. So we do have those. And then we're really big on trigger items. So through our research of the location, we formulate our trigger items and our questions due to that research. So our trigger items will vary from location to location.
Cool. That works pretty good. I like the idea. I do like the idea of the body cameras, though, because that way you can actually, like you say, do keep track. Now, are your body cameras set up to where they're wireless and connect to a laptop as you're going through the evening, or are they just record and download?
Just record and download. I mean, that's just the simplest for us. I really try to keep it as simple as possible. We don't have a DVR system or anything like that, just because I don't want to waste time with unrolling cable and setting all that up and really, eating into all of that. And plus, who wants to, carry cables everywhere? So, we try to keep it as light as possible. I feel like I have a lot of equipment, but when you look at it, probably compared to other paranormal teams, it's not that substantial.
There's his other comment.
Okay.
I was getting
not sure. I'll let Joe ask that one.
I don't know what he means by that.
Backwards facing. Do I ever do backwards facing body cameras?
So that means putting them on the back instead of
the front. Do you have one on the back as well? Or?
Absolutely. Tom, that's a great question. And yes, we do. It was actually very effective for us at the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. We had one facing backwards on one of our backpacks. And during one of the EVP sessions, we set the backpack down, or the investigator was sitting down and the backpack was facing off into the hallway. And we captured a light anomaly in the hallway that we can't explain. So that's a great technique. And absolutely, we do that.
Oh, that was actually a pretty smart question then.
Well, yeah, of course there was.
We've done that.
Come on.
Well, he tends to be a comedian,
Well, yeah, that's their podcast, is the comedy thing. So
gotcha.
So what was the best place you've been to so far with the most activity?
For us, they've all been very unique in the historical aspect as well as the paranormal. I would say that for me, the one that had the most paranormal activity would be the old Gilchrist County Jail in Trenton, Florida. So when Miranda Young and I actually were investigating there, she and I were the only two females, we're the only two people on the property that night. And for me, if I could call an investigation the purest investigation that I've ever done, it would be this location. And I just use that word for lack of a better term. But for us, that entire night, every piece of equipment that we had was validating every other piece of equipment. And by that, I mean, when we did our walkthrough, we were actually capturing male EVPs in the moment. We both heard them, and all of our equipment caught it. And then we were seeing shadow figures. And then we caught those shadow figures on the SLS as well as on our stationary night vision cameras when the shadow figures ran through a laser grid. And then again, back with the EVPs, we were actually mirroring those up with what was happening on our REM pod. And Miranda has an ovilus. So the ovilus was saying words that were matching what we were getting off the REM pod. And so for me, if I could put together a textbook paranormal investigation, I believe that one was it. Just for the sheer volume of paranormal activity that we captured.
Cool.
Sounds like you
And
got
there
a lot
and
of
there's
evidence off that one.
and there's that equipment named again, Ovilus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
we just recently heard that one.
Dale was the first one that I heard ever say anything about that. So I was kind of intrigued at the time on that one too.
See, we just started doing this last year. So.
It's a very interesting device. My team personally does not have one. Miranda has one, and we were actually able to use one that we borrowed when we were at the Exchange Hotel in Gordonsville, Virginia. And that it just some of the responses that we captured during that night on both nights off of the Ovilus were to me extremely compelling because the words and the names that were coming across were extremely germane to the situation. So the Ovilus at one point at Gilchrist County Jail, we were asking who's in this cell, who's with us, and we got the name Robert. And that name was never given to us by the owners. But during our REM pod session, which came after the Ovilus session, during the REM pod session, we were asking, was the person that murdered you Robert? And our REM pod started alarming. And so after that, we went back and talked to the owner and we said, was there a person in here named Robert? And she confirmed that there was. So for us, like I said, that investigation was just a great textbook example of really what we do and what we find.
Wow. Pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Now, did you mention anything about EMF meters? Do you use those at all?
K2 meters.
Yeah, we have K2 meters. Yes,
okay.
we have 4 of those actually.
So I must have missed the K2 meters talk there.
I do talk a little fast, so sorry, and I might not have mentioned it.
I caught it.
That might have been whenever I swear I heard someone behind my curtain holler at me, and I kind of moved my headset, so that could have been at the time that I missed it. So.
Gotcha. No, we do have 4 of those, and we use them quite extensively. We've had success pretty much everywhere we've gone with the K2 meters. I also feel it's a valuable instrument, not just for the investigation, but also during the day tour, because we always take a day tour before any investigation. And obviously we do that for 2 reasons. The first is to rule out any environmental factors such as light, noise, ambient noise, anything that during the investigation could influence our findings. And then also to do that sweep. And then obviously to get the historical layout before we go and tackle it in the dark.
Okay. Go ahead, Joe.
I was just.
You got questions?
No. I was just, it's just like how we do things. We kind of go over the layout before, and then at night we're back again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It more like common sense. But I'm interested in
there's
some of
Tom's other half
places like.
Hang on.
Oh wait.
Tom's other half.
Molly.
And then she asks, "Have you ever had anything
physically affect
you or your team?"
Thank you, Molly. I appreciate that question and for joining us tonight. Not physically harm us. When we go into a location, we're pretty good about setting boundaries and basically saying you're not allowed to touch us or unless we say that you can. So the physical effect of us has been things like pulling pant legs. Most of the members of the team have longer hair, so our hair gets tugged a lot. And so that's the kind of physical effect that we've had. There's never been an instance where we've felt anything negative or demonic towards us. Like none of us have gotten scratched or bit or anything like that, or pushed, unless we've asked the entity to do so. Like I said, to tug the pant leg, touch the shoulder, something like that.
Or tough tug on the hair or something like that.
Exactly, tug on the hair, something like that.
Have you ever had that happen?
Absolutely. Yes. It was the second investigation that we were doing at the West Virginia State Penitentiary. And we were down in the base of the boiler room area called the Hole. And our younger sister, Michelle, she actually had her hair pulled up. And it was actually a very neat experience. We were in the middle of a very cool K2 session. And then, we said, if you can touch us if you'd like, and all of a sudden her hair lifts up. So that was pretty compelling for us, and definitely one of the things that we could not explain that night. But
right. Now, is that something you caught on camera?
We do have it on camera. Yes. It wasn't the clearest of videos. So it was not included in our investigation video, but we do have it on camera. So what I also do, in addition to releasing full length investigation videos, I also release what we call quick clips. So things that really didn't make the video get put in our 1 minute quick clips. And all of those are on our YouTube channel.
All right, I'll have to check that out.
A lot of work.
It is, but we feel it's worth it because we're having a good time with it. But I do have to say that the West Virginia State Penitentiary is, to us, just a great location to investigate, and we always enjoy going there.
Yeah,
we haven't got much out of Wisconsin yet.
Yeah, we haven't really left Wisconsin.
Oh well.
In my youth, whenever I was in California living out there, I actually had a lot of experiences. And
here's
that's
one.
what kind of got me into this.
Another one from Molly. Is there anywhere you wouldn't go to investigate?
Again, great question. For me, no, I don't think so. We always have that sense of exploration. And so for us, anytime we get the opportunity to investigate, we'll definitely jump on that opportunity. Now, that being said, once we get there, if it's something that we feel that could be uncomfortable or something demonic, because when we go into a location, if we feel anything that we consider either demonic or negative, we will back out of that space. We won't leave the location, but we'll back out of that space. And for example, Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, we've investigated there a couple of times, and there's one room that is supposed to be that's supposed to house a demonic entity. And so for us, we'll put a voice recorder in there, but essentially we kind of stay out of that space because that's not what we're looking for. For us, it really is about getting to those spirits who want to tell their stories and allow us to connect with the history of the location. So to answer your question, there's nowhere that I would not investigate now.
So basically you're looking for connections on a positive level with most of the entities or spirits.
Absolutely. And that's a great way to say that. For me personally, I treat these entities like I would a human. Everybody who's alive, everybody has that human need to connect, to be acknowledged. And for me, I feel that's the same thing with entities. They just want to be acknowledged. They want to have their story told. And that's one of the reasons why we use that phrase in every investigation, because we do legitimately want to recognize that entity, want to tell that story. That's not to say that we haven't had entities that have been a little bit more gruff or have told us to get out or back away. In that case, we do back away. But I think the things that we found, the compelling evidence that we've captured, really lends itself to telling the story of the location and paralleling that with the history of the location.
Okay. That's very, very good way of doing things. But you got to realize, though, the entities probably most generally were human at one time.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's going to always be there. And then,
absolutely.
So So, well, you know what? I'm gonna let Joe ask this question. I've been asking him.
Well,
Go ahead,
it
Joe.
was like a follow up to like Molly's, first question when she was asking about having anything physical affect you or your team.
Mhm.
Now, not just the physical part of it. Have you ever been in a place or a location where, you know, one of your members or you might have felt kind of like sick or just
Mhm.
something's just not right?
That's funny to say that. We were actually at the Villisca Axe Murder House, and Michelle and Jenny, two of our investigators, were up in the room where the children were killed. And so Michelle stood up, and as she stood up, she said, "Oh, my head is hurting." And as they walked out of the room, we captured a child's voice saying, "I didn't do that." So that to me was extremely compelling. So yes, on that aspect, yes, we've had several instances like that. I kind of have a tell, if you will. My right leg will start to kind of feel like it's going to sleep. And when I start to feel that, I'll say, okay, I think there may be something here that wants to communicate with us. But and that the headache thing, that's really the extent of it. I would imagine. Like I said, we've never been pushed down a flight of stairs or scratched or bitten or felt so uncomfortable that we had to leave the entire location. But yes, since you brought that up, we did have that headache incident in Villisca.
I was just asking because we had like a weird incident kind of like that happen to us out at one of our state park investigations
And
last year,
that's
and it
Joe.
happened to me.
And what was
I,
that?
well, we were out. What was that? We were out at
Asylum.
Asylum State Park. It's basically a park that's built on Indian burial mounds,
Yes.
Native
Well,
American,
there's
and
there
it's
effigy
got
mounts.
right effigy mounds. But they also got a lot of rich history of a tribe that used to live on that land a long time ago.
Okay.
Now, the weird thing is, though, it was more tied to more of like the Aztec history of the tribes,
Okay.
because in the area where Aslan is, there are effigy mounds, but they're also like pyramids. And
Mhm.
there's a lake called Rock Lake, which is in a town called Lake
On Lake
Mills,
Mills,
which
Okay.
is where the
pyramids
Aslan
are underwater
is.
there.
There are actual underwater pyramids there
Very
under
cool.
the lake. So that history of that area is tied in with the Aztecian history
Mhm.
from South America. So
Right.
that's kind of a difference. That's a little bit of a difference of an area than
Mhm.
you would for like the regular Native American.
From Native Americans, correct. And so, Joe, what was your
Well, we were
experience?
walking. Well,
I'm
we were
sorry.
walking around, and we had one of the I had one of the EMF meters, and it was going off, like it was just going off. And before it was going off, I was already like feeling really, I don't know how you, queasy, you know, dizzy, lightheaded,
Oh wow.
and the whole footage when we got back and tried to examine all the evidence that
Mhm.
we got, it was all corrupted.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Now
Yeah.
that's
so
interesting.
we had to take a second trip,
Now
more well
here's
planned out, and just to get some footage from there.
yeah.
So
But here's the more interesting part about that. The video card that we were using in the camera, and it was Joe's camera. Now we both have the exact same uh,
night vision
make and
cameras.
model of cameras, so we can interchange batteries if we need to and stuff
Of
like that.
course.
But this video card that was in his camera was an absolute brand new card. First time he ever used it.
Wow.
So there was no actual excuse for the video or any of that to be corrupted like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't. Even to this day, we're not even sure. And I'm not. I don't know if he replaced that
Nope, it hasn't been
chip.
replaced. It still works.
So it's the one that you're
Wow.
using now.
It still works. Yeah. For
Okay.
Wow.
some
So
reason, it
yeah.
was just that footage that just did not want to come out.
Yeah,
And
that it is interesting.
we found a lot more. I mean, the biggest part of that whole location that I found so interesting is there's a princess burial mound. Okay, that people
Mhm.
can go and visit. And if you stand on this burial mound, and it's identified with a rock
Okay.
that's all carved out, you'll hear,
This is the legend.
this is the
Okay.
legend, you'll hear rattling like shell noises behind you. And when you turn
Whoa.
around, nobody's there. She was buried with three or four belts that were made out of shells. Okay.
Wow.
Now, here's the kicker to this story. They took her body out of there
Mhm.
and put it in a museum in Milwaukee.
Whoa.
And ever since then, the Native Americans have been down there in Milwaukee protesting the museum to
Yeah,
put them
not cool.
back.
Yeah, you don't typically want to mess with that.
Well, no.
That's not cool.
That is one of the things that people don't quite understand is with Indian, with the Indian burial grounds and stuff like that. You really don't want to mess with them.
I find the history more.
And if you do want to go into them to do any kind of investigation, you really need to talk to the elders of the tribes that those burial grounds actually belong to, and make sure it's okay with them.
Absolutely. Well, because the Native Americans, they were completely in tune with the land. I mean, that was extremely sacred to them, no matter where they went. So that's why, when we go to locations, we do use trigger items such as feathers and Native American chants in order to kind of elicit a response if we can get it.
Okay, Tom's asking another question.
Well, Tom, you got that wrong. They're not from West Virginia. They're from Florida, by the way,
well,
Tom.
He's half right and half wrong. My mom is originally from Glendale. So we do have family that's still in Glendale. We do have family that's still in Glendale. My sisters and I were actually born and raised in Florida, and that's where I am currently. Honestly, we haven't looked. I know that obviously the legend of Mothman, we have not looked into that specifically. Mostly of what we do is paranormal, so spirit activity, ghost hunts, if you will, ghost hauntings, if you will. So Mothman hasn't really, it's kind of like Bigfoot. It's something that we're extremely interested in, but we haven't really investigated or taking up that type of research.
So you're looking at Mothman being more into the cryptid type of the paranormal.
Exactly. That's what we would consider it, for me anyway. That's just my personal take on it.
Yeah, I like looking into those things too, because I like to try to solve. I mean, because some of that has to come from some truths.
Oh, I agree. I haven't actively gone out and looked for Bigfoot, but I'm hoping he's out there and saying, "Yay!" I really do hope he's out there at some point, and maybe somebody will find him. But so that there are, obviously legends like that we have a working knowledge of, but it's just something that we don't investigate.
Right. So one of the things I was kind of curious about, now you started around 2014. When you first started into this, did you or any of your group have what would be called the flight? The kind of a
flight response.
Yeah, the responses. You got the flight response and you got the fight response. The fight response is where you stand your ground. The flight response is where you just kind of like drop everything and run. So were you or any of your group ever in the flight type thing, or did you always like have that? I'm here. I'm gonna keep it going, and I'm gonna work right through this.
It's the latter. So just some historical background about the team. We are, like I said, we are five females, but we all hold advanced degrees. So I have a PhD. My twin has a PhD. We've got 2 JDs and a master's on the team. So awesome. We all have a sense of research. We all have a sense of exploration, and we are all very, very strong-willed women. So when we go into these locations, there is no flight. We've never come out. I don't even think I know how to scream, honestly. So we actually go towards the noise because we do legitimately want to know, was it caused by something?
That's me.
Exactly. Was it caused by something physical, or was it something that we can't explain? So I mean, I won't say that we haven't had moments of being startled, because you're standing there, like say in West Virginia, and you have a cell door slam behind you. That's startling. But then we turn around and go, okay, well, let's go figure it out. And so that's really what our team is. So we are all very strong women. We are all very assertive women. And so for us, there's never been any flight in any of the investigations that we've gone to.
I was just kind of curious, not because you're women. I'm just,
No, and I didn't take it that way, but because there are some guys that will run, but for us,
I have seen some guys that would literally tinkle their pants and run.
yeah, no, for us, it's really is about that exploration, and we do really run towards it, if you will, because we do want to find out what's happening.
Well, you want the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, exactly. I've been that way most of my life. I grew up with, like I said, my parents were from the South, so they're Southern. So I've always had that curiosity there. Plus, my mom always used to spin tales about ghost stories, and being able to see her passed away sister walking up the driveway coming home from school.
Mm-hmm. Wow,
stuff like that. So
that's fantastic.
Looks like Molly's got another question.
Yeah, she does.
You do residual locations
residential
too?
Residential.
Sorry.
Learn how to read.
Molly, thank you for the question. We actually do
residentials.
We conduct residential locations as well as businesses. We've had several businesses approach us with reports of paranormal activity, and we've gone and investigated those. But yeah, we actually have investigated numerous residential locations, and for us, we like them just as much as the commercial. The commercial for us is really an attempt to build our portfolio, to really get our investigation style and our trigger item style and all of that really kind of down pat. And it really is where we take our girls trips, if you will. So that becomes our girls trip weekends when we do the big commercial locations. The residential ones we'll do obviously the one-offs. And for those, we typically don't have the full team because we are spread out across the country. So for residential, there's usually only 2 or 3 of us that go and conduct residential or business investigations.
Oh.
And while doing it that way too, you can actually cover more ground.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they've had their share of fun too.
Yes, it is. You have to have fun with this. We don't go in and just and are militant about it. That's really not what we do. We do have a lot of fun with this. Like I said, when we go, it is a chance to meet up with sisters and friends several times a year to do something that's extremely unique. For us, just visiting the historic locations that we've visited is in and of itself a great adventure. To be able to do that with my sisters and look for some paranormal activity, that just, takes that to the next level. Because not many people can say, they stayed the night in the St. Augustine Lighthouse or the Bliskax Murder House or Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. But I can say that I've done that.
I've
heard of the St. Augustine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not exactly certain on this, but was that not featured with Jason and Grant on Ghost Hunters? It was, and they captured an entity that was looking over one of the landings of the lighthouse.
So that was the big reveal on that location. So yeah, I've actually think they've done it several times. We've actually investigated.
I thought that was the one that they caught the chair move whenever Grant got up, walked out, and went down the stairs from the very top part of the lighthouse.
I think they caught several things there, but I think the big claim to fame on that reveal was the little shadow figure looking over. Correct. Yep. But it's a great place to investigate. The problem with the lighthouse is it's the only location where you have to investigate up because of the light tower. So you really have to, it really kind of broadens your mind, if you will, on how to do an investigation there, because you've got the echo and then you've got 14 different landings that you've got to figure out how to cover and how you're going to investigate there. So for us, it's always a unique challenge when we go there, but we absolutely love it.
That is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So now this one's one of my questions I've been holding on. What is your favorite location that you've been to? It's a 2-parter here.
Okay.
And what location do you really want to get to that you haven't got to yet?
Okay. My favorite location personally has been the Ma Barker house in Central Florida. It's in Ocklawaha, Florida. And I like that house for a couple of reasons. One, to date, we've been the only team to investigate there. And we were able to go in, we got permission to go in there on the anniversary of the shootout. So what happened in the house was in 1935, 2 members of the Barker Carpus gang held up in that house, Ma Barker and her son Fred Barker, held up in that house, and they were surrounded by the FBI on January 16th, 1935, and they were killed in a shootout. And that shootout still has the designation of the longest shootout in FBI history. So we were able to, we went into the
story. Yeah.
The county owns the house now. Marion County owns the house now. And so we asked permission to go into that location, and they graciously allowed us to do so. So we went in on the 84th anniversary of the shootout, and I was expecting some type of paranormal activity, but the compelling evidence that we captured really exceeded my expectations. So we actually ended up doing a 2-part investigation, and I enjoyed it so much that I actually became a volunteer and a docent at the location. So I'm there several times. Well, before COVID, I was there a couple times a week, a few times a month, actually doing day tours of the location. So I'm actually, the history behind it, the fact that the owners had the presence of mind to preserve that location as it was in 1935. So you can go in and see the bullet holes. The furniture is original, so it still has bullet holes. It's just an amazing location. So that for me is probably near and dear to my heart. As I said before, the one that had the most paranormal activity, I'd go with Gilchrist County Jail in Florida, as well as Fort Mifflin in Philadelphia. The location that we have not been to that I would love to get to is Leap Castle in Ireland. We have not taken our show international yet, but that is the location that I would absolutely love to get into. And so hopefully in the future, we can check that off of our bucket list.
That would be cool. That would definitely be cool.
So, but all of the locations, like I said before, all of the locations that we visited, for us personally, it's the fact that we're in these historical locations, right? We've got that
historical,
that tactile, feeling of being in there.
So, when you do capture evidence, do you try to debunk it yourself, or do you just let it be seen by your viewers and let them try and debunk it?
No, we actually try to debunk it ourselves. The first thing that we do with our videos is we never classify something as haunted. We always say we have compelling, unexplained evidence. And I do that for a couple of reasons. One, I don't feel it's my place to label any place that we go haunted. That's up to the proprietor and the owner. So I will never label it as haunted. I always say we have compelling evidence that we can't explain. And I do that because if somebody has an answer to what we're hearing or seeing or finding, then I would love to hear that response. We go in and control for all the environmental factors that we can. And we, like I said, we take copious notes on everything about that location. And absent all of that, when I boil it down to what we find, the only answer that I have is that it's unexplainable. So, for example, when we were at the Exchange Hotel in Gordonsville, Virginia, we had a voice recorder laying on a bed in one of the rooms. And during the night, we had some investigators across the hallway, but during the night, we captured a male voice saying, "I don't know, I'll be back at 4:30. It sounded like an elderly gentleman saying that full phrase, and there are no men on the property. We do not have any men. We do not have any children. So when we capture a male voice or a child's voice, I can quickly rule out one of us because there are no male or children."
Exactly.
So what we do when we go back and look at all of our footage, how we'll do it is we'll each take, like, okay, you got this voice recorder, you got this one, I got this one. And so we'll put in our earbuds and we'll just hit play and just listen straight. And so if I find something, then I clip it and I'll label it like EVP1 from bedroom, and I'll send that to the team. And I won't tell them anything. I'll just say this was in the bedroom, and I'll send it to the team, and everybody listens to it, and then they individually answer me back and say either I don't hear anything or I think it's saying this. And then we come up with a consensus, because I feel that we are a microcosm of our audience. So if we can't come up with a consensus, then it doesn't make the video. And because I just feel that if we can't agree, then the audience probably isn't going to hear it or know what that's saying either. So that's
Right.
really how we do our evidence review. We do try to debunk everything that we can, but there are some things that have been so unexplainable. Joe has mentioned the Lizzie Borden house a couple of times, and that was our last video that we just completed. And, we captured several male voices in that house when we were there, and there were no men with us. So again, that to me is extremely compelling.
And see that right there alone is one of the advantages of you being a all female investigative team.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you capture any kind of male voices or anything,
it's not one of you guys.
Exactly. You can
team.
completely roll yourselves out immediately on it. So
yes, absolutely.
That is a pretty good aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. So, but the Lizzie Borden house, back to Joe's point, was it was an amazing investigation for us. Again, it was a collaboration with Ghost Biker Explorations, who, to us is just a great colleague in the field. So we're honored to have her join us on that one. But it's fascinating to be in that location and know that you're walking on the same floors that Lizzie Borden walked on and touching the door handles that she touched. And it's just, sometimes when you go to these locations that you see on TV or you see in books or whatever,
I feel kind of starstruck.
You do. And it's a different perspective. The 3D perspective of being there in person is so much different than the 2D perspective on television or
Right.
a picture. And so to really look into it, and then you're like, okay, how could she not have done this murder? I mean, it's kind of obvious, so when you really start looking into that stuff and really kind of putting into the history with the context of the location, it really is an amazing adventure to us to be able to do that.
Right. So, I think earlier I was just thinking earlier the reason I said residual, but I was asking that. I was also thinking, because there's like two different types of hauntings. You have the residual hauntings, which is kind of like a videotape on loop playback, and then you have your intelligent hauntings.
Correct.
Now, in your time of doing these, I would imagine that you've actually ran across both types.
Correct. Yes, we have. And I'll actually give you an example of a location that had both types. We were back at the Ma Barker house. And as I said, it was a 2-part investigation. So the first thing that we did is the night to the shootout happened on January 16th. So on January 15th, we went in at about 5:00 in the afternoon and we set up all stationary equipment. So night vision video cameras, a couple trigger items, and our K2 meters and voice recorders. And we left the house. Now the house sits by itself on about 40 acres. There's nothing around. There's no light. There's no noise. You need a 4-wheel drive vehicle to get to it because it's on Central Florida sand. So we left all of that running, and there was no pollution, environmental pollution around the house at all. So when we went back and looked at that and reviewed that footage that we captured, the voice recorder that we had in the room where Ma and Fred, their bodies were found, it actually said there were 2 EVPs. One said
that's
Freddie.
The house right there.
Yeah, that's the house.
Off your video of the history. This is off their website, by the way, the Soul Sisters website.
Very nice, Joe. So
and I followed the history link. So.
Oh, thank you. So there was 2 EVPs. The first one said Freddie. The next one said yeah, Ma. And the first one said get ready. So to me, that's residual. To me, I think that's exactly what was said before they started shooting at the FBI. So to me, that's residual. And then also during that night, we captured an EVP saying get out. So I think that's intelligent. And then when we went back the next week, my sister and I, it was just the 2 of us, we did an investigation where we were there for about 5 hours, and we actually have a spirit box, which is, the AM FM radio. So it was sweeping through, and one of the gang members of the Barker Karpus gang was named Alvin Karpus, and he was not killed at the house. But when we were doing the sweep with the spirit box, I said, is anybody else here with us? And it said Alvin Karpus, which again is completely germane to the situation and something you wouldn't expect the spirit box to say if it was picking up any interference.
Right.
We got that. And then when we took the spirit box up into the room where Ma and Fred were killed, I said, what happened in this room? And it said, they murdered us. We're the ones dead. And so that, to me, I would consider intelligent.
Well, yeah. When you're asking a question and you're getting an answer to that question, I also would consider those intelligent hauntings. But if you're asking a question and it's not even an intelligible answer to the question, it's just something that is kind of like random, that can actually be residual.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, most generally, it's like with the Civil War fields. Some of the people who've caught video down there, it's almost identical with other people's videos. And that would be what I would consider residual hauntings, because it's just basically the remnants energies of the soldiers going through the movements that they did prior to being killed.
Oh, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. And when we go back to the example that I used from the Gordonsville, Virginia exchange house, that male voice that I don't know, I'll be back at 4:30, that to me is completely residual. Now, I don't know if it was a doctor. I don't know if it was a soldier. I'm not sure who said it, but I think that's residual. And then further on during that night, about 2.5 hours later, on that same voice recorder, we captured a child's voice saying, "Hi, this is my bed." And to me, that's intelligent. I think he was acknowledging that the voice recorder was on his bed and that this was his bed. So that's two examples on the same voice recorder in the same night of a residual and an intelligent haunting.
Yeah, right. Putting the recorder on his bed, it was probably invading his personal space.
Exactly. And he's like, "Hey, listen, lady, get it off my bed because this is my bed." So I think we have another question from Tom. International places you want to go. I would love to go to Ireland. Like I said, I would love to get over to Leap Castle. I've been to England several times, not as a paranormal investigator, and I would love to get back over there and explore some of those castles. And I was also in Australia for a few months back in the year 2000, again, not as a paranormal investigator, but I did some tours of some reportedly haunted locations, again, that I would love to get back to, mostly near the Melbourne area.
Yeah. So here's one for you. I think it's located in Austria. Dracula's Castle.
Yes. I would love to go.
I would too. Is that in Romania?
Yes. The Romania.
Okay.
Yes. No.
Yeah, that is an interesting castle. Have you ever seen pictures of it?
I have. I actually have seen pictures of it, and I would love to go because Europe has such a different history than the U.S. history.
It is.
Don't get me wrong. I love U.S. history. I anything about the U.S. history, I'm all over. I love it. But European history is just so much more in depth, and it just has such it's just longevity to it. So if I were to be able to go to somewhere like history. Exactly, like go into Westminster Abbey if you were allowed to do that and do a paranormal investigation, because you're standing on William Shakespeare. He's right here. So all of those places that you can go over there, they just have a large amount of places that are capable of being haunted.
Yeah, they are.
They're beautiful. They are absolutely beautiful. Those castles.
They are. Yeah, they are.
I've never been over there. I've never been out of the States, but I've seen lots of video, lots of pictures, and that is one of my regrets if I don't ever get out of the States.
That was
is to be able to go over there.
Going over there once a year to go visit different castles.
And that's a great hobby to have.
I'd absolutely love to go spend a weekend in Dracula's castle and do an investigation.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, maybe we need to hook up here.
Well, it's like I said. No, I don't actually.
I'm a vampire anyways.
But no, it's like I said earlier. With me, I never truly had that flight response. I never truly had that. I'm gonna be afraid and take off running. I've always stood my ground, faced the area that the sound or noise or visual came from, or advanced into that area and went forward into it, because to me it's very intriguing, and again, I want answers. I want to know why that happened or what caused that to happen.
Absolutely. And I mean, for us, we go in with the expectation of finding things that we can't explain, of hearing things and seeing things that we can't explain.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I know that TV shows have that sensationalism factor that they have to portray in order to get the viewership. But in my mind, you're going into a prison to look for essentially ghosts. So why are you running out when you see one? That to me has never made sense.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
and to Tom's point, would there be a language barrier talking to spirits from overseas? I do believe that there would be. That's another thing that I have with with television media shows. You know, when Ghost Hunters went international, they were talking in English. Now, granted, some of them were getting responses, but why not try to speak in native language, in the language of where the castle is at? And that's what we would
Exactly.
absolutely do. I mean, we would probably learn phrases that we would use during investigation that would be in that native language. And that's why, again, when we go to locations, we also use Native American chants.
Right. Well, that just makes sense.
It's like common
It
sense
makes
if you're going to do that.
absolute common sense, because you're going to be in an area that if you're wanting to connect with the energies that are in that area, you need to be in connection with the like if it's Native Americans, you need to be in connection with what their traditions and everything were at that point. Or if you're in an area, like if you went down to Central America and did an investigation down there, you would want to be able to speak or have phrases that you could speak in the native tongue of that country or area that you're in.
Absolutely.
Because that is what is going to help trigger what you're looking for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if we were to go overseas, that is exactly what we would do. Like I said, we'd probably all take turns learning some phrases that we would say during the investigation.
I mean, that's what you'd have to do, you would think. I mean,
Well,
I find some of that stuff on those shows, those TV shows, I find them
Hey,
hard
Dale.
to watch sometimes.
There's Dale.
Because, hi, Dale.
Hey, Dale.
How you doing?
And you're right, Joe. For us, like I said, I understand Hollywood. I understand there has to be that sensationalism and that marketing value. I get it. But on the flip side, the more we delve into this, the more investigations that we go on, the more it really does scream fake. And when I'm doing these podcasts, such as yours or general interest podcasts, that's one of the things that I'm trying to portray is that you see these things on television and they wrap everything up in an hour, and that's not how it is. And there's so many differences between what is done in real life with paranormal investigators and what is portrayed on television shows. And so that's why I'm trying to when I go to these general interest podcasts, is to let the mainstream audience know that yes, this is what you're seeing is a little bit different than what is actually occurring in the field.
Well, yeah, because what you're seeing from what we would put up there or what you would put up there is it's what we've captured. It's not what we're editing to make look like what the people are expecting.
I leave it all raw footage. I just edit like a front screen and some credits at the end.
See that's my thing with it. I just, to me, there are certain ones that I've seen over the years. It just, watching it makes it feel staged.
It really does. It really does. And to Dale's point, reality TV isn't ghost research, and he's absolutely right. For us, that is really what we want to do. We want to go in and show that we have controlled for everything, that this is actually research based, methodically based, and actually put that before our viewers. And so what we also try to do is bring in that historical aspect, because I think a lot of that is missing. So
That's my favorite part of it.
Oh, thank you. I want enough history on my videos to be able to essentially carry the entire video. So even if we didn't find anything paranormal or unexplainable, we would still put out that video just to highlight the historical significance of the locations that we're going to. And that to me, I feel is extremely important. Absolutely. It's extremely important. I mean, because without the history, there would not be paranormal research.
Right.
So, and if we can do our part in preserving that, if somebody can watch, for example, my Lizzie Borden video and cut it off right before, we start everything, just watch the intro and then stop it. I want you to walk away with enough knowledge of what happened, of the house, of the location, to say, I want to visit there. And then those tourism dollars are going towards that preservation of that location. So that's why we're extremely dedicated to putting in an accurate account of what happened at the locations.
Right. Now, see, with us, with Joe and I, since we just started this last year, we're still learning a lot. And,
Absolutely. And that's the point.
And that's one of the reasons that we're trying to get guests like you on here and talk to you about stuff that,
Mhm.
that
People that's
you
been
do
doing
and
it
the
for a
way you
while.
do it. It gives us more of an idea of how we can change and improve and do things a lot better.
Oh, absolutely. And we're all learning. We're all evolving with this. And,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
not to interrupt real quick, but, that's another thing that I find fascinating with some of the groups here, and not to disparage anybody. That's not what I'm trying to do.
No.
But for me, you will never hear me say that I'm a paranormal expert, because I do not believe that a paranormal expert can exist. I can say that I have more experience. I can say that I have, a different viewpoint or experience because of my, nice 8 years of doing this, but I'm never going to call myself an expert, because we're dealing in things that can never be proven.
Yep.
There's a
It's
guy
like Dale.
and that guy's been doing it since 1975.
Exactly, Dale. We're all still learning. Absolutely.
And then Molly asks, what do you do if you can't find the
back history on a place? Yeah, we had difficulty finding the history of their home, because we went and did a private investigation of Tom and Molly's home.
Oh, okay.
To us,
they have activity. They do have activity.
Some activity, and I paid the price afterwards.
Oh, geez.
That's a very interesting story. I'll finish this quick. It's a real quick one. We were in the basement in this little kind of like storage space in their basement, and we were doing some filming down there. Mark was trying to get something on our EVP recorders.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that I actually did like corner something, and I was I was trying to interact with it and invoke it.
Okay.
Well, I was walking I walked right into the spot, and I was like with an EMF meter, kind of seeing if it would go off anywheres. And while they were filming, they caught orbs.
Okay.
Okay. We know for a fact that there was no dust flying around, because I have a little tool that'll tell me if there's any type of breeze in the area.
Okay.
So there was no breeze.
You can't say for a fact there wasn't dust. You can
but
say
there wasn't
that
a breeze.
It was
keeping
it
up
was
the
a
dust.
calm. It was a calm environment down there where we were.
It's a very controlled environment, very calm, and there was no insects flying around.
Mm-hmm.
So I noticed that as well while we were doing this.
Okay.
But these orbs, they were going through, and I had to go back, because I got to thinking after this, because I didn't really look at the footage myself until I start doing editing. But I had to go back, because I think it was about a week or 2 weeks after we were there. I mean, I knew I was going to have to recoup for a couple of days, because their house is old, a lot of stairs.
Okay.
So, and I've got what's called chemo-induced neuropathy in my legs. So I have a difficult time walking sometimes. Well, my one leg, my right leg, I couldn't handle the pain for like 2 weeks.
Oh.
My knee was real bad. So we went back, my wife and I went back and looked at the footage, because she mentioned something that she thought it was the same leg that the orbs were going through.
Interesting.
And it was.
Interesting.
And they went through right around the area of my knee.
Yeah. And it did look like they were orbs coming through his leg, which was kind of weird.
That's kind of interesting for sure. To back to Molly's question quickly, we've actually been very fortunate in being able to find the history that we're looking for, that really guides our research and our investigation. For residential places that we've gone to, we try to find as much as we can, going through property appraiser records, archive records and such. But most of our residential investigations, we don't put forth as for public consumption. We do tell the owners that we keep that private. That's private for them. We will give them a DVD or a thumb drive of the investigation, and that's for them to release if they want to. But for us, I've never really had a problem finding something about the location. It seems to be, for me, just, I guess maybe my research background leads me to find certain facts and figures. That's all I can say about that. But I think if there was an instance where I couldn't, then I would make that known, that there was just a lack of knowledge in history about the location itself.
Yeah, because I tried, and I've got an investigative background
as
well.
Yeah.
Okay. I used to work in security and as a private investigator.
Oh,
And,
nice.
I worked with law enforcement real close on a few things, and that was like 30 some odd years ago, but I'm also considered a computer genius or expert.
Nice. Well, then,
So
sometimes you just have to admit that
I know
there's
how
just
to
not a
find the
lot of.
information when I'm looking, but I could not find. But the rich history in the town that they live in was very rich,
And
and some of it was like hard to explain why some things happened the way they did, because they live in a little small town here in Wisconsin.
okay.
But way back then it was named something else, and it was a big lumbering community because it was right on a river.
Okay.
I agree with
And
Dale.
there was a lot of dark history there.
Yeah, and sometimes when you're doing that, yeah, you do have to start broad and try to narrow it down as best you can, and maybe that broad investigation, that broad research as you do, Joe, will lead you to kind of come up to some conclusions in the absence of the house itself or the business itself having history.
Well, we didn't come up with any conclusions about the spirits that are there, and didn't get a name until after, because they found an old chest that from the previous owners that was in the attic, and there was a very unique story behind that whole chest. Tom contacted the
Do you want me
person.
to handle it?
Yeah, okay. Go ahead, because I don't remember it all.
During our investigation, Tom and Molly was telling me about this chest they had in the attic, and it was full of a bunch of stuff from one of the previous residents, and it was basically just like awards and like baptism stuff from the son of the people that lived there. Okay. So Molly and I were in the attic, and I was setting up the camera up there. And so I'm like, well, I don't have a problem with it. Let's go through it and find out some of the stuff, see if we can find anything. So we found a name, and Tom took the name and actually located the person on Facebook and got in contact with them.
Wow.
Now, they were supposed to come, this person was supposed to come and pick up the stuff from them.
Okay.
But before that person came to pick it up, he wound up getting killed in a car accident. Now, this is weird. This is weird how this works. So, after that, the father of the guy came to get the stuff and was talking with Tom and Molly about different things. And both Tom and Molly said the guy just out of the blue, just without being prompted, asked them if they ever had any kind of activity in the house, like paranormal activity. And what it was is the Tom would come home from work before Molly did, and cupboard doors would be open just a smidge, drawers would be open a little bit, the oven door would be open to where the light was on. Different stuff like that. So the guy actually just flat out divulged all this information, and he said that they had a couple of mediums come in, and they got a name, and the name was Thomas, and a boy of about 12 or 13 years of age.
Okay.
Dressed playing pranks pretty much, but dressed in 1920s clothing.
Oh wow.
So that's how all this came out. And the whole thing is, the way that the whole thing worked out is with Tom contacting the guy, and then the guy winding up getting killed in a car accident just not too much longer after that.
And then find out it was a kid, and find out that they knew the name. The previous owners knew the name of the spirit through psychics and a medium and all of that. And they haven't. Well, we figured the reason that it was kind of showing itself, or making its presence known only to Tom and not so much Molly, was because it was a child, and it
maybe identifying because of the same name.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a great compelling piece of evidence and a great connection. So you're probably absolutely right.
Yeah, We did an update.
And we
show
did
with
we did an update show with them, and here's something really weird too that happened to me. I'm on my laptop like I am now, but I was at Joe's house at this time. This was on the 4th of July, and I'm sitting outside, and we're doing the show. We're doing just fine. And I have a smartphone like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
It reset itself.
Oh, wow.
Don't know why.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. Never did that before. Okay. So I set it back down. Just shortly after that, it reset itself again. Second time.
Jeez.
And I looked at it, and this time I hit the button to bring the screen up, and it had changed the date on the screen from July 4th to December 21st.
Oh, that's wild. Wow. Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
anybody that knows anything about like the backgrounds of Wicca and stuff like that and everything, they know that December 21st is. Do you know, Kris?
I don't. I'm lost here.
It's winter solstice.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
And it was so weird.
Wow.
It's winter solstice. It's the shortest day of the year.
That's correct. Wow.
And it's actually in the Wiccan faith, it's actually the day that the shaman of the Wiccan community would sacrifice the tree and the gifts that they put on the tree.
Yes.
He'd light it on fire to appease the gods to bring the sun back.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot of compelling evidence. Absolutely.
It is really weird the way all that just kind of fell in with it. It kind of, and the weird thing is when I seen it do that, is like that just, it didn't click right away.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it didn't click right away.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow,
No,
after a while,
yeah. Wow. And to Dale's point, reality television often sensationalizes the history of locations. I absolutely agree with you.
I do agree with him on that too.
Yes, that's why when we put together our videos and we put together our historical research, I do spend a lot of time in a library. I can get some stuff from the internet, but I actually like to go into the library still and research, go to the archives and go ahead.
You get better information from the library because Wikipedias on the internet can be edited by anybody.
Anybody can write that.
Absolutely. I never use Wikipedia as a source. If I can help it.
I don't like using it as a source, but it gives me a starting point, a jumping off point.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and obviously TV has to sensationalize it, otherwise the audience wouldn't be there.
Exactly.
But I think it's done a good job of highlighting that there's paranormal investigators out there, but I think it's a detriment to us because it doesn't highlight what we actually do, and it is a little disheartening because you have teams out there that are truly, legitimately in this for research purposes to put out some compelling evidence in a very methodical way, and yet we struggle to find an audience base. We struggle to find a following or a YouTube following and get that name out there.
We don't glorify it.
Oh, exactly. That's it. Exactly.
That's the whole thing. We're actually in it in the aspect of trying to prove it or disprove it, and we don't glorify anything. And that's why we don't have that viewer base like they do with the shows on network
Absolutely. And for us personally, again, not to disparage anybody, but we don't act like quote unquote idiots, if you will. We're not going out there and throwing chairs around or kicking doors in and saying, hey, I'm here to provoke you and do something. You got to prove to me that you're here by hitting me and all that. That is absolutely not what we're about. So I actually had the question yesterday as to why I haven't monetized my YouTube channel. And for me, I don't want to be seen as, well, you just fake this evidence so you can get more viewers, so you can get more money. So to your point, Mark, we're not trying to sensationalize this. We're not trying to grandstand, but if I can find an audience base who's legitimately interested in the history and what we're putting out there, then that's what I welcome into, our audience base.
Oh, you must have missed that part, Molly. She did say a little bit of that at the beginning.
Molly, well, just to recap quickly, we actually got into it as a girls' trip. We went to the West Virginia State Penitentiary for our first investigation. And after that, we just really decided to formalize who we are and what we do and kind of our style. So it wasn't, I can't say it was any profound moment that led us into this. We've always had a fascination with the paranormal. But as far as like that one point in time where I can say, this happened and it catapulted me into paranormal investigations, it really wasn't like that.
I got to say something though. It must help that most of your team is actual sisters.
It does.
So that's got to cut down on your communicating when you're out and about in the field. You can just kind of use little signals or gestures, and your sister is going to read your mind and know what you're thinking and stuff like that.
It absolutely does. It does help to some extent. And my twin sister and I, we throw that uniqueness in there as well, because we do kind of have that twin connection, if you will. So we do utilize that. But it's great to be out there with my sisters. They're my best friends. But then on the flip side, if they tick me off, I can't kick them off the team. So it's like, all right, pay attention, girls.
I got one final question for me, though.
Yes.
In all your investigations that you've done, did you ever come across one where you, because of the hype around the site and everything else, did you come across one where you actually had to sit for a few minutes and calm yourself down to make sure that you didn't psych yourself out to see something or hear something that wasn't actually there?
And that's a great question. I would say that occurred when we went to the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. And it goes back to what we saw, how we describe seeing things on television. When you roll up onto Trans-Allegheny, it is massive. It much grander than you see that they can express on a television show. So for us, we really had to kind of sit down, and it really changed our entire investigation structure when we did the day tour, because, we're going in with a mindset of where to set things up based on what we've seen on television, but it completely changed our entire investigation structure. So we did have to kind of sit down and say, okay, we're going to have to reevaluate this based on the size of this. And we did go into that one expecting that we would probably get something unexplained, and it did not disappoint. That was a great location.
Yeah. All right.
I believe that one, Dale.
And Dale, I have to agree with you on that one. We've actually been approached by two different producers who the exact same thing. They didn't want us to embellish evidence, but they wanted us to change our style, i.e., bring in a male onto the team. Yeah, exactly, and change our style, our investigation style, i.e., become the screaming girls, and we actually turned them down as well. So I can completely concur with you on that one.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do anything like that. I mean, but to go back to your thing, we went to one of my locations that I really wanted to go to early on when we went, and when we finally did get there, and I saw this place on TV, watched some of our local authors that write the paranormal books and the histories and stuff like this. And the way they showed some of that on TV, I'm like, and I get there and it's like, how can they do this?
Mm-hmm.
And it was about a cryptid, but we went down to that road and I could easily right away see how people's minds could just play tricks with them on seeing things. It was about the Beast of Bray Road.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've heard of that. Yes.
You've heard of the Beast of Bray Road? Well,
yes,
I went to Bray Road. We drove down there. It was night. It was rainy. It was kind of stormy. If I'm not mistaken, there was even a full moon out that night.
Nice.
We didn't even get out of the car. We just filmed it all from in the car. But I could easily see that with no street lights on this very long, dark country road, and you don't get no lights from the house, that if you saw, because we live in Wisconsin and where Bray Road's located in Elkhorn, is got enough forest around where you could get a coyote or a wolf alongside the road eating a dead deer.
Oh, wow.
Because it'd be easy to hit a deer on this road too.
Uh-huh.
Okay, because there's no street lights whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So it's very dark at night. very scary. If you're driving down there alone, I could easily see how the mind could play tricks with someone. See a wolf eating roadkill and say, "Oh, that's a beast."
All of a sudden, yeah, there you go.
Much bigger than what it actually was, you know.
It's Bigfoot, bending over, eating a carcass. So yeah, and that's again something that you do have to, control for as well when you go to these locations. Tom asked, would a male help dealing with spirits that came from a time in history when females were less respected, perhaps get better communication? Dale, for us, or Tom, I'm sorry, Tom, for us, we actually kind of control for that through our trigger items. And we feel that through our research, we're able to connect with the entities that are in a location. So, for example, when we went to Fort Mifflin, they have a casemate there that's a subterranean underground casemate 11. And through their research and through our research, it was determined that it was used as a solitary confinement cell, where a gentleman by the name of William Howe was kept during the Revolutionary War. He was tried for treason and he was kept in that solitary confinement cell. So knowing that, we took trigger items in to attempt to get communication with him. So we took in water, we took in a cigarette, some pieces of bread, and because we thought that that would be items that somebody in solitary confinement would want. And so we put that in there. We left it for a little while. And then we came back, just two investigators, myself and Cara. So we came back into the area when we went down into that cell. And I said, did you see the things that we left for you? And we got an audible response of yes. All of our voice recorders picked it up. And to me, we compensate for the lack of men on the team by trying to use our empathy, if you will, to get trigger item and use trigger items to get that communication.
Well, that makes more sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for us, we've been very fortunate in getting unexplained evidence at most of the locations that we've gone to. And I think it also goes back to the fact that, I like to say that everybody hears, but not a lot of people listen. And for us, we take pride in the fact that we do listen. I mean, we'll listen to every piece of audio footage that we capture. When we're sitting there in EVP sessions, we sit and we actually listen and really be in the moment. So I think that being an all-female team really kind of lends to that, because we don't go in with bravado. We don't go in with thumping chests or anything like that. Like I said before, we legitimately want to tell the story of the location and any entities or spirits that may want to communicate with us in that location.
Well,
right. The
history of a location is important too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The women have the mothering nature. The men have I'm going to pound my chest. I'm the man.
Well, yeah, and we do take guests. We've had a couple of investigations where we had taken a guest in with us who was male, and the response is a little bit different. So knowing that, and one time when we went to West Virginia State Penitentiary, we had a male with us. So we do get different responses based on that. But we've found that our style really lends itself to being an all-female team. So, but like I said, we do take guests. We do collaborations. We've collaborated with other teams. Like I said, we've done several collaborations with Ghost Biker Explorations because we really enjoy her style. Yeah. So she's extremely dedicated to history like we are. She's extremely dedicated to getting the paranormal activity as we are. But we've also collaborated with male teams as well. So you just have to find that balance. And for us, we're willing to collaborate with anybody who is really into the research base like we are, and it really appreciates the location for the location itself, and then the paranormal after that.
Yeah, see, I found that since we've started this, I've learned, and like I said, I was born and raised here in Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. So I've learned a lot more about the history than I thought I knew a lot. Mm-hmm. Not even close.
But you're right. It is amazing that some people don't know this. Like I said, going back to the Ma Barker house example, I was familiar with the Ma Barker house from the time I was 6 because my grandparents lived about 5 miles from the house. So when we would drive by, they'd always point out and say, "There's the Ma Barker house," when that happened. When we did our investigation and put together our video, we were approached by the newspaper. So there were several newspaper articles written on our investigation, and we had people contacting us saying, "I never knew that house was there. I never knew that Ocklawaha had this history. I never knew that we were in the national spotlight for 5 or 6 weeks in 1935." And to me, that that's sad because that's your background. I mean, that's your backyard. You should have that experience. You should know that history. And so I feel that if we can bring that to the forefront, again, and preserve those locations. That is my number one job in this.
Right.
No,
Yeah. Well,
that's a good.
similar to what we're trying to do.
And I think most legitimate paranormal teams are trying to do that. It's just getting out there and getting that exposure, if you will, because it seems that in this day and age, unless you're busting your head through a window pane or kicking your foot through a door, you don't get that recognition.
I don't understand that sometimes.
No.
It doesn't make sense.
I agree.
I always try to approach it that I want to make sure that I cover everything. If I see something that looks strange, I want to try and explain it.
But the history of the location, we also try to include with our video footage as we're talking. Like we do the research on the location prior. Lots of research, looking into the place, how long it's been there, what was there before.
Absolutely. And you have to do that.
But in the process, you learn so much that
you
would have never known before.
Oh, absolutely.
It gets extremely interesting. We went to the second private home investigation. She showed us all this stuff, and I had no idea. And I knew the area pretty well that she lived in Baraboo, but I had no idea Baraboo had that much of a rich history in the paranormal world, and it dated as far back as it did. And we found all kinds of things dated back from the 1920s in her attic.
That's fantastic.
It's just the history that you end up finding is amazing sometimes, and how well preserved some of it was.
Oh God!
Unbelievably preserved. Some of those newspapers.
She produced newspapers from the Kennedy assassination.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
And
they weren't even yellowed.
They were she found them in the attic. They were in a plastic bag, and she put them in a more of a sealed. No, the one she found them in wasn't sealed. She put them in a sealed plastic bag and sealed it down, pushed the air out, sealed it down. But yeah, these papers were in really good condition.
That's fantastic. And that's what you need. You need to preserve that. Tom, I agree with you. When traveling to a new city, taking the ghost tours is a great way to learn about the history of the location, as well as some of the paranormal reports. Just as long as you get a good tour group. There's been some that I've been on. It's been like, oh Lord, this is it. But then there's been several that have been great. One thing that I actually took the audio tour in Alcatraz a few years ago, and that place is phenomenal. So audio tours are really big as well, because you do get that history that as you walk through the location. But if you've never been to Alcatraz and taken the audio tour, I highly recommend it.
No, I lived in California at least half my life, and I never went to Alcatraz. I've seen it from the San Francisco Bay Area. I was on Fisherman's Wharf. You can see it from the Fisherman's Wharf.
If you can. Yep.
But I've never been out to the Alcatraz Island itself. In fact, I think during the time I was there, I think they may have had it shut down because it was showing signs of actually sinking into the bay.
Okay. Yeah, but I do agree with Tom. Taking a ghost tour or taking an audio tour of the city is just a fantastic way to learn about the history.
Oh yeah. Okay, I think we're about ready to end this. Sounds like I got company too. So, thank you for being a guest. I really appreciate it. It was fun.
Absolutely.
If you haven't yet, people, check out Soul Sisters. They can be found at soulsisterparanormal.com. And you can see all of their interesting videos and past investigations from everything from what she's talked about and a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I'll have to go and check it out, by the way, because like I said, with my work schedule I wasn't able to get in there and do much. So.
Well, hopefully you're fascinated now, and you'll go and binge watch. That's.
I am fascinated.
I've watched a few. I had to watch a few.
Well, thank you so much. I do appreciate that. And Joe and Mark, thank you so much for having me. I've really appreciated being here.
Thank you for being our guest. We appreciate that.
Absolutely. And thank you to everybody who's asked questions tonight. It really is nice to have that engagement. So thank you so much for joining us tonight as well.
All right. Till next
All right.
time. And also, you can check us out at utterlyinsaneproductions.com. Stay safe.
Stay healthy,
There you go.
especially